Hi, I'm Mary from Joyful and Mary Quilting, and today my buddy Frank and I are going to teach you how to make Frankenbatting for our quilting tip. When we're finished making a quilt, we always seem to have lots of extra pieces of batting that we have no use for. We can throw them away, we can save them for smaller projects, but actually we can repurpose them, assemble them together into a larger piece, and have another piece of batting ready to go for our next quilt. It's called Frankenbatting, which is fitting for Halloween, right? Now we all know the story of Frankenstein and how he came to be. We're going to do the same thing with our batting. I'm going to show you how to assemble these pieces together, these scraps, and we are going to create a large enough piece to use it for another quilt. There will be no waste. As you can see, we've got a little bit of an assembly going on right here. That's where the name Frankenbatting comes from. The first thing you need to do when you go through all those scraps of batting is you need to sort them according to batting type. Now you can see this batting, these are the same pieces and can go together. They have a different texture, they have a different feel, and you don't want to mix them when you're putting them together. This batting is actually a little stretchier, and I did assemble that into the larger piece, but it was a little bit more difficult simply because it was stretchier. So I had to be really careful when I put it under my sewing machine and put these two pieces together. When I assembled this piece, however, it went together much easier just because the batting was a little sturdier. So I'm going to show you on a small scale how to assemble those two pieces of batting. You'll just put them together, any pieces that you have. You can piece them this way, you can piece them this way, whatever goes together right. Just keep in mind that you want to have some nice smooth edges when you're finished. You don't want bumps in the batting because that's going to show on your quilt when you're quilting it. So if you look at these, the way that we're going to put them together is we're just going to sew them together flush next to each other. We're not going to overlap them. If they overlap a little bit, it's not a big deal. But we want to try and keep them as flush as we can. You can see by this that is not going to happen because I just cut this off when I was using the batting. So we are first of all going to take our batting pieces and overlap them about an inch. You can feel it in there. I can see I've got about an inch, maybe a little bit more because these are pretty crooked. And again, we're assuming that we're using large pieces. Now you can see where the edge is. And I'm going to just go right down the middle of what I cut, and I'm going to cut it. Then I want to get rid of those extra pieces. So here's one, and then we've got another one that's hiding under here. Now when you look at it, it's flush. And we are going to take a large zigzag and just zigzag right down that seam, making sure that, again, we're not overlapping, but we're not pulling it apart because we want to make sure that it's all covered, that we have that nice flush connection. We don't want to have any gaps in between this as we are sewing. Now, it's a little cumbersome when you take it over to the sewing machine and you are trying to keep this all together when you have a large piece. The piece that I assembled, this is 45 by about 62. I know that you can make them larger than that if you want. You can add extra pieces to it, but it was a struggle for me to keep that long seam straight and flush. I found that it's helpful to put a couple of pieces of Scotch tape lightly on that batting. Now, it's hard to see, so you don't want to sew over it, but just enough to keep it in place when you're taking it over to your sewing machine. And before you get to it, you'll remove that tape. Scotch tape removes pretty easy and it doesn't take up the batting. I found that some of the other tapes that have a little too much sticky on them distorts or ruins or stretches your batting, and you don't want to do that. So just a few pieces of Scotch tape if you want. Now when I did one of them, I didn't use any tape at all. When it's a bigger piece, I think the Scotch tape helps. So let's take it over to the sewing machine now, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to sew that zigzag and make our Frankenbatting piece. We first of all want to make sure that we have our sewing machine set to a zigzag stitch, as wide of a stitch as your machine will allow, and about a 2.5 stitch length, which is it's a medium stitch length. Usually when we quilt, we do a 1.8, 1.9. When your machine first starts up, it's usually about a 2.2, so we're going to go a little larger, about a 2.5. So we're going to start back here. Again, the middle of our foot needs to be right on that flush seam, and then we're going to carefully guide it through. I'm to my tape. I've removed my tape so that I don't run over it, and I'm going to keep going again. You can see I've got a really large zigzag stitch here, but I'm keeping everything together. I'm to the tape again, so I want to make sure that I remove that without removing too much of the batting. And then keep going. One more little piece of tape. And there I have finished my Frankenbatting seam. And look at that, it's beautiful. It doesn't come apart. It's going to hold nicely together. And you have saved all of these pieces of batting and repurposed them rather than throwing them away or just stacking them up and saving them forever and ever without a use. The more patient you are, the more pieces you can put together. As long as you have the space to feed it through your machine and you don't get any overlap, you are good to go. And it's a great way to repurpose rather than throw away all the extras. I am always trying to be joyful, but I will always be merry.